To understand the value-based strategy coming from the game theory and the work of Brandenburger and Nadebuff, the first question we have to answer is, what is value? It seems a very straightforward, simple question, but it comes up to be probably one of the most difficult questions to give an answer to. First point is on the left side. Value is created in the neoclassical way once the equilibrium point of supply and demand is reached. So here we have here we have consumers who were willing to pay this price, and they end up to pay a lower price, that is the equilibrium point in which supply and demand meet. So the valued part is surplus, money that as a customer I would have been ready to pay, but I didn't pay because the market price was lower. And producer surplus as well. So the one who is providing me the product was ready to provide the product at a lower price, but at the end, giving again the point of equilibrium, the producer get a higher price. So here we have value created vis-a-vis the intention of pricing based on suppliers and consumers. As usually happens in macroeconomics modeling, things seem simple. If management and real world come into the discussion, things change incredibly. So we have different suppliers. These are firms, companies that are providing something to customers, and so here we have many customers, and we have suppliers to the firm providing products and services to customers. And so there is competition among companies to get the customers and to be supplied. So the things become suddenly a bit more complex than what we expect. But at the end, there is an important point that is coming from the left side, from the macroeconomics, that is that one transaction creates value. And the value is the difference among willingness to pay, how much a single customer wants to pay for the product, and the supplier cost, how much is the cost that has been incurred to supply a product or service for that customer. So supplier cost is the minimum amount of pricing, and willingness to pay is the higher amount of price. But willingness to pay minus supplier cost is the total value created by that transaction. And here there is an incredibly important point about value creation, because the value creation a la Brandenburger is added value that is added for the customer, that is increasing the customer willingness to pay. So it's a concept that has to do with the customer and what we do to increase the value for that customer or for that segment. Then there is another value creation, the financial value creation, that has a completely different concept that you can see here on the right. It's the return on invested capital minus the weighted average cost of capital. So if I create a return that is higher than the expected return that is included, that is shown by the weighted average cost of capital, I create more value that is a completely different kind of value, but it's value for shareholder. That they expect 8%, I provide a return on invested capital of 10%, I created 2% of return. That 2% was not expected by shareholders. And the reason why this is not expected, because there is a model that is the capital asset pricing model, the CAPM, to measure expected return. So if you beat the capital asset pricing model in terms of you beat that expectation of the customer, you create value. But that's a completely different value. That's value for shareholders. The value created a la Brandenburger is value created for customers, willing to pay minus price that you're asking for giving the product that give that value to the customer. In the said reality, the average managers, not the outstanding ones, not the ones that study a lot these strategic things, but the average manager basically do not understand the difference between the two value creation. Even Brandenburger and Nallebuff did an incredibly huge effort tried to define that, and they start to say that there are two different kind of value. It's added value vis-a-vis value added. Value added is the financial one, added value is the consumer one. But at the end, if you read, let's say, economic newspaper or even strategic plans, there is a lot of blah, 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 buzzwording of value creation. And 90% of the time, in my opinion, nobody knows of which one of the value they are referring to. And it's incredibly risky because there is a huge difference in terms of concept, value created, willingness to pay minus price, instead of ROIC minus WACC. And there is also completely different strategic implication on that. So now take a look on value creation. What is value creation? And to do that, we ask some help to Mr. Brandenburger himself, who created this simple and interesting video.
Value. Value. Creating value, capturing value, adding value, destroying value. The word value is so often used in the business world, and likewise in business schools. So, what exactly is value? One clue comes from the supply and demand curve. Here, we look at the equilibrium price and shade an area representing consumer and producer surplus, an economist's term for what we call value. But who creates value, and for whom is it created? When business transforms resources from suppliers into products for customers, value is created. Here, the value chain depicts business at the heart of this transformation. Do we see a difference from the curve to the chain? In the former, sellers and buyers meet in the market. In the latter, we think of three stages: suppliers, business, customers. Here, the market is not a pre-existing entity. Business creates markets. So with the value chain in hand, we ask, how much does a customer value the product? Our customer has two decisions. At one branch is the status quo. No exchange happens. At the other branch, our customer receives the product and pays some amount. Here, what is an amount paid for the product so that our customer would be no better off than before? This ceiling refers to the customer's willingness to pay. In a symmetric tree, we ask, how much does a certain supplier value the resource? As before, one branch is the status quo. At another branch, our supplier provides a resource and receives an amount. Here, what is the minimum amount our supplier would accept for the resource? This floor is the supplier cost. We now have two quantities on a ladder: willingness to pay and supplier cost. What is the difference between them? The full length of the ladder is total value created. If we add one rung for price received by the business and another rung for cost incurred by the business, we see how value is divided among players. But if we think about the overall value created, let's call this the value pie, we see that business not only affects the division, but also the size of the pie. When a business raises price or lowers cost, the division of the pie changes in its favor without changing the size of the pie. But what happens when enhanced product design increases willingness to pay, or improved sourcing relationships lower supplier cost? Conversely, are there moves that shrink the overall size of the pie? What might these moves be?
So in terms of willingness to pay, the definition in the video is quite clear. There is a difference between status quo and the moment in which someone receives a product, and this has to do only with, especially with the willingness to pay. So if we create something in terms of a product that increase the willingness to pay as added value, more added value for customer, then in that case, the customer willingness to pay will increase, and as a matter of consequence, the price can be higher. And the same point can be done with the suppliers. So the idea here is that you can in some way change the status quo, providing a new relationship with your suppliers and closing the deal, and you have to pay them something that is above their supplier cost. And again, you are working on the value created, and here you have the total amount of value created. And now the question is, once you have created that value, how value is divided? Who is getting the value? Managing, working on price and cost. So the firm is increasing or lowering its cost for suppliers, and so the value for suppliers is changing. And more important, the company is changing the price or the willingness to pay, and in that case is changing the total value that the company is capturing, is getting, or the value that the customer is getting. We will answer this question in the next video.